Do you want to ride or die? Because, yo, you got to have your ride or dies with you. La da 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 da.
We're putting forth something that Tupac made, or from something that Biggie made. Like, their hands touched this stuff, metaphorically or literally.
These guys are 24, 25 years old when they passed. Their music and their spirit and their souls were so large that we're still here 25 years later talking about them still being on the Mount Rushmore.
How do I want someone to experience Tupac's life? How do I want someone who knows him intimately to experience it? And how do I want someone that doesn't know him at all to experience it?
What up, what up, what up? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, want to thank you for joining us for another edition of the Charles Coleman Podcast. I'm your host. You already know what it is. Charles Coleman in the building. We're going to start off with the Bison beatdown triangle offense that we are running. To my left, we've got Mr. Style and Performance himself, Emerson's own. Mr. High Energy DJ CEO is in the building.
Gang. What's
Yo,
happening,
you looking like you stepped off the set of Casino.
I mean, I'm feeling like I got a lot of money.
You looking like you got a lot of money, my G. That's how you got to do it out here.
I'm feeling wealthy right now.
I love it. I love what you're doing. You champagning, pinky ringing, and campaigning.
Hey.
And of course, to my right, it's the loudmouth from down south. The sister I never knew that I needed and really didn't want, but I got her anyway. The one, the only, Hillary Younger is in the building. Let's just give you a round of applause. You're giving Black Daphne. I appreciate it. I like what you're doing.
I told you need to find me a new name.
Before it was the mouth of the South. It's the loudmouth from down south. It's different. It's a little different.
Even more disrespectful. Like you raised the disrespect a little bit. The loudmouth.
I kind of did though.
You did.
You caught that?
Oh, I did.
You're looking like you, but you're giving Daphne from Scooby-Doo today.
Well, thank you. I thought I would bring in spring.
This is like a real retro couch right now in terms of the look that it's giving. The synergy.
We're always in sync.
We are.
You know, people out there, they're sick right now. HU people.
Sick.
They'll be all right.
What would they be without us, though?
Church.
So I do have a question, though. Someone said this the other day, and it made me laugh. Black men are more faithful to their barbers than they are to their women. Like, we don't mess around. And we so faithful.
Black men don't cheat.
Amen. And we don't cheat on our barbers. If we go to another barber, we be feeling like emotionally bad. Like, oh, yeah. Hillary, do black women have that sort of like loyalty to your hairdresser?
You do until she loses her razzle dazzle.
What is a razzle dazzle?
Until she starts making you look like an auntie. But there are some black women that are chair hoppers because the reality of hairstyles. It's called chair hopping. Like there are stylists who do pixies very well, right? You know, like a shortcut.
Okay.
And she's like, and that's all she does. And then there are women who do like sew-ins or wigs or, silk presses. So honestly, it kind of lends itself to chair hopping depending on where you are in your hair journey. Because a woman does a great silk press doesn't mean she can do a great twist out. You know what I'm saying?
So
it doesn't even mean that she really wants to.
Person?
Absolutely. The
and
person
then like
who braids your hair
person?
is never the person who styles your hair.
That makes sense.
Yeah, come on now.
The barber is like,
he just does what he does. It's not like I got a different beard guy than a different hair guy. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just
I feel like I am the rites of passage person for the Charles Coleman Podcast, honestly.
What does that even mean?
Every time I come here, I am teaching you African Americans something black. I am fully like...
The funniest thing about that is people who are listening would really think you black. They would think Hillary is black.
Right.
She's the most African-American person I know.
And that's how I want to sell it. Like, I'm relatable.
Like, I'm relatable. The fact that she even said, I'm really relatable.
Very relatable.
Right. Like, it's such marketing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's going to bring us to our shortcuts. This is our news and views, our conversation about things that you may not be hearing in mainstream media, but have an impact on culture and community. So we're going to get started with something fun. This is our latest edition of One Gotta Go. Okay. So you guys know how this game goes. Basically, I give you 4 different things, and you guys have to pick which one has to go. So today, we're taking it to the boob tube. We're taking it to TV. All right, one's got to go.
Okay.
We've got Living Single.
Okay.
The Cosby Show. A Different World. And Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Jeez.
One's got to go.
What was the first one again?
Living Single. And Khadijah went to Howard, so don't play.
I'm going to say Fresh Prince. Yeah, I'm going to say Fresh Prince.
Wow.
And I'm going to say Fresh Prince because as a man, you would probably automatically assume like maybe Living Single because it was kind of so heavy like on the black woman side.
No, I think
but it was like my first introduction and like from a television standpoint to like entrepreneurship. So it holds a lot of weight for me. The Cosby Show is just untouchable. And then A Different World is untouchable too, because how do I even end up at Howard?
Who would go to college
without A Different World? So that's,
See, I don't agree. I get it. I know. Living Single for me would have to go.
Wow. I'm very surprised to hear you say that.
Mainly because they were really old to still be living together for me.
I bring that up all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And with good jobs.
That's a fair point. I never even thought about that.
Old to still be living together.
I never thought about
that.
There
were how many women in that apartment? 3?
4?
3. No, Maxine lived somewhere else.
Oh, she did?
It was Khadijah,
Regine,
and Sinclair.
Yeah.
So many, no.
And rent was affordable then too.
And honestly, it was kind of like for me, very neck and neck with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Living Single, but that's what did it for me with Living Single.
Real quick, and Girlfriends, did they live together?
Well, Lynn she was kind of like the friend who couldn't get it together. She kept
okay, so that makes sense.
So she was kind of a squatter, would come back and forth, but that happens, what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
no, that's real life.
That happens, but none of them lived together. One was married, the other one was a realtor, one was an attorney. So they were pretty much either establishing themselves or already established. I just didn't understand why nobody ever made the decision, hey, so it's kind of time for me to move out. You know what I'm saying? We're sharing a bathroom. I'm sorry, I didn't share a bathroom. Let me stop before they realize I am African American.
All right, so mine, gonna be unpopular, and it's all right, because this is—
You always unpopular, just go ahead.
I've been unpopular.
Yes, absolutely.
And yet I'm here.
That's okay.
There you go, right? So I'm going to have to get rid of A Different World. Clearly Living Single was important because you don't get friends without living single.
Tell us why you're getting rid of A Different World. Don't try to piggyback on the living single.
Sure, but I'm going by why I don't get rid of everything else. It's kind of like process of elimination, unfortunately.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with A Different World why I'm getting rid of it. It's just I'm sort of like talking about why the other ones have something that, in my opinion, they gotta stay.
You said something sacrilegious, and now you're trying to do the whole lawyer thing. Tell us why you're getting rid of all these black people's college educations. Tell us why.
Because you get a lot.
You just killed Lou Rawls. Tell us why.
I didn't just kill Lou Rawls.
Yeah, you did. The Negro, what was the college fund? The United Negro College Fund? Tell us why you just assassinated Lou Rawls.
See, you ain't gonna put that on me.
You did. You got rid of A Different World.
Don't put the spirit of Lou Rawls' death on me. I rebuke that and rebuke you, Daphne. All right? So I think that you get most of the good stuff about A Different World, or a lot of it, spirit-wise, from The Cosby Show.
Yeah.
You do not get a girl from Baltimore. No, you don't. Like, okay.
That's later.
Y'all are tripping.
That's later.
It is,
that's later.
No. It's not that much later. Because you had Janice in the room. What about the RA? What's her name?
Kim?
Jalissa. You don't get Jalissa. Jalissa was
yes, you do. With Pam. Jalissa and Pam.
She was a late in life student. That woman had been married.
But think about sort of the challenges that Pam had on Cosby Show compared to Jalissa. Pam, you know what I'm saying?
Pam was a cousin who came out of obscurity. They never even talked about.
They did talk about her backstory.
How was she a cousin? Because this is the thing about the Cosby Show. And
now you're talking about plot holes. That's totally different.
Totally, because we never saw those kids go over their auntie's house. They didn't spend the night with their grandmother. They didn't visit. The Cosby kids were very, very sheltered.
Rudy
it was very insular.
Rudy definitely spent the night
over whose house?
Over
she was the
grandparents.
only one. What about the other kids?
Well, she was young.
How did they get a cousin and they didn't have an aunt or uncle?
You talking about too many plot holes.
No.
This is way too deep.
If you get rid of A Different World, you don't go to college and you don't go to college.
I'm going to college. You know why? Because Claire Huxtable and Dr. Huxtable.
You're selling crack.
No, they told me to go to college.
You're in prison.
And I wasn't going down to Baltimore to get donuts with the wretched.
I see
you.
With the wretched.
So that's what's going on.
Big fun.
No. I-95 on the Eastern and Wind unit. Both of y'all shackled to the floor.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on. Recently, I don't know if you heard, there was a gym in Florida. I think it was LA Fitness. Mm-hmm. They had a rodent infestation, and the rodent got stomped out.
Oh, okay. And I like the way you told the story.
You
I know. I like that. I like that. You did good there.
That's that retro vibe.
I like that.
You don't gotta say it. You just understand.
I like that.
Right?
That's mob talk right there.
Of course, the old saying is, "Snitches get stitches."
Yeah.
But where is the line between like I'm snitching, I'm telling, versus I want a safe community?
So what was going on in LA Fitness that would...
Tekashi got his ass beat.
Yeah.
Oh,
wrong place, right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean...
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. But it made me start thinking about this conversation about like cooperating with law enforcement in our community and that narrative. He's not relevant at all to this conversation. But where do we draw that line in terms of like, you ain't got to be talking to Popo, but you talking to Popo? Like, is that snitching?
And you mean especially if you're not a part of this life?
Yes, if you're not in that life. You just telling.
It's for black people, it's always going to be complicated. It's never black and white. So there's no right or wrong answer. The truth of the matter is we don't trust law enforcement. We have a reason not to trust law enforcement. And even if we're looking for things to be done to clean up the community, we never expected it to be done on a righteous note. So that's why it's hard for us to have an appreciation for somebody who's going to talk to the police, because we know something simple as, 3 days in jail or just going to prison in general could solve it. But no, this means like people can lose family members like unnecessarily because they are the biggest gang in the world.
They definitely convolute things.
Right.
It's very hard. I mean, we have a terrible relationship in our community with law enforcement. And so it's tough because what happens now is people break code. Like we used to have a code where old people, children, mothers, women, off limits.
Yeah.
And so I think now for me, those are the reasons that I may engage the police. I don't really mess with the police like that.
I don't either, and I'm a former prosecutor. My relationship with law enforcement is tenuous at best because before I'm any of that, I'm a black man. So I've never had police pull me over and ask me, where'd you go to college? I think part of the issue is that we sort of conflate the notion of safety with an automatic involvement of law enforcement. And as long as we do that, it's gonna be a thing.
Yeah.
And so the notion of snitching and what that is versus telling or what have you, like you said, CEO, it gets really, really complicated. I mean, now for people who are in the space and you violate that, I got no love for you. Once you cross that threshold and you're there, like whatever happens to you, happens to you.
Yeah, but I also think that, we need to start self-governing again. Like
agreed.
Daddies,
100%.
uncles, brothers,
100%.
all that kind of thing. Like, I mean, I'm from Texas, so I keep that thing on me. Like, it's just, you show out and get woe out.
That needs to be on a t-shirt.
I'm just saying, show out and get woe out.
That sounds like something your grandmother told you before you went to the store.
Because I'm going to get away.
Well, listen, let us know what you think. Which one of the four would you have gotten rid of? Put it in the comments. Whether you think snitching or telling is okay, if it's wrong, let us know your thoughts. Put it in the comments. Drop us downstairs for us on the Charles Coleman Podcast. We read those things. We respond. We'll be right back with another amazing conversation that we got lined up for us. So stay tuned. This is, of course, our Black Brilliance branded conversations where we are having conversations with movers and shakers across all different industries. Super excited about this discussion we're going to be having today and my special guest. We got a 2-for-1 this time on the couch joining me. You may not know who they are now. You might, but definitely by the interview, by the time it's over, you will know not only who they are, but you will be super familiar with their work. I am pleased, super excited, thrilled to welcome, to announce Arron Saxe and Geoff Walker, who are in the building. What up, what up, what up, what up? Welcome to the Charles Coleman Podcast, Arron and Geoff. So to give listeners, viewers, some background on who you all are, both of these individuals are responsible for curating experiences with the estates of two legendary, iconic hip-hop figures. Now, Arron has worked with the estates of a number of different people. Bill Withers, he works with RZA, Otis Redding, but he has done something in particular around the life of Tupac Shakur, curating an entire experience, basically walking all the way through his entire life and everything about him. Whereas Geoff has done something on the other coast by curating an incredible experience around the music, the culture, the life of the Notorious B.I.G, an incredible event at Lincoln Center here in New York. A lot of people didn't know whether he was going to be able to pull it off. Not only did he pull it off, but he pulled it off and it was super dope. And so now I have both of them as curators of amazing experiences around iconic hip hop folks. And I'm super excited to get into the discussion. So first, Arron, and then Geoff, why don't you just tell people a little bit about, number one, your vision, and then number two, your work, particularly as it relates to Biggie and Tupac, and what it is that you've done so that they can be more familiar.
Well, thank you, Charles. Nice to see you. Good to see you, my friend, Geoff Walker. Man, thank you for that introduction as well. My favorite thing you said was in relation to Geoff, but it said to me and to us all the time, which is we didn't think you could do that. You know, put a little time, effort, and care into something, and you'll be surprised what happens, especially when it's been neglected for so long. I was really fortunate to produce a wonderful educational experience called Tupac Shakur Wake Me When I'm Free. The core of that entire exhibition is about who Tupac was as a man, and to give context to who he is. And all art is context. So when you're explaining who somebody is or what they've created, it's always good to know the environments from where they came. And that really was the impetus for the exhibit. So that project opened here in Los Angeles last year, January of 2022. Just excited for everybody else to see it across the country and the world.
Geoff?
First of all, thanks, Charles, for the great introduction. You know, Arron is literally like my brother, so I get excited to hear him talk about the Tupac exhibit and what he was able to pull off. And I've known him for 20 some odd years, so I never had any doubt that it was going to be pulled off and done at the highest level. And I think vice versa, when I called him and said, hey, I got this crazy idea, you know, what I want to do with Big, there was no doubt in his mind that I would pull it off. Now, as you go out to those other people that you have to convince and pitch on what your idea is, you know, they don't know Geoff Walker Geoff's not a music guy that's been in the music industry for 3 decades. Geoff is just some dude who's done some legacy work with Serena and Venus, Derek Jeter, board member, and
flex on him, Geoff. Flex on him. We're here for it.
I mean,
we're here for it, brother. Flex on him.
If they don't know my resume, they don't know my resume. Well, that's some of the resume, you know? And so I have a high level of belief in my passion and my love from the Notorious B.I.G. Sonically, I know we're never going to hear Big again actually live and in person, obviously. But how do we hear him and how do we experience him in a new format, in a way and in an environment that no one maybe had ever expected hip-hop to go, but specifically the Notorious B.I.G. because he isn't here. So as I was sitting in my loft here in Los Angeles, California, you know, it was literally like, I want to hear Big with a full-on orchestra behind him, and I want to hear Ready to Die, and I want to hear Life After Death. I knew that I could get it together because I had some relationship with Lincoln Center. Thank you for my brother on this call with me as well, who got me in touch with a few people over there. And then I had to explain it to them what I wanted to do. And for whatever reason, Big working above was like, hey, okay, we believe this can happen. Like, it was like, yes, let's go ahead. The biggest thing for me though, and Arron will talk about this, I'm sure as well, is like, once you get the support of the estate, because respectfully, could I have gone out and done this and tried to do it? Yeah, of course I could have, but you have to have the backing of those people who were instrumental in keeping Big's legacy alive since he's been gone for 25 plus years. And thank you for Wayne Barrow, Mark Pitts, Elliot Osage, and Mama Wallace giving me the blessing. Them, again, not knowing necessarily who I was, other than I think they saw my passion. And I know that they always want to see the legacy elevated in different environments, and I was able to provide that. So for me, we were blessed to have all the pieces come together, and it put a battery in my back once the estate was like, let's rock and roll, Geoff. Go ahead. We trust you to do this. So I knew I had to bring it at the highest level possible. And thankfully, we were able to do so and executed it. And we did it back in June of last year. And I think people are still talking about it, and more things to come.
Let's get right into it. You guys are stewards of the legacies of two really, really critical figures in the hip hop landscape. And part of what I think is so critical around the context that art provides, to go back to what Arron was talking about, is when you're talking about the conversation about hip hop at 50. And individually, both Big and Tupac represent so much in so many different ways, but collectively, they also represent something very, very unique and important to the history of hip hop. How do you feel like you all's work further capitalizes on that story if you're looking at the big picture of hip hop at 50? Like, really, you know, what does that art mean to you, and what do you feel like the way that you chose to curate that art adds to the tapestry of hip hop at 50? Because art is storytelling, and it helps to contextualize stories as much as it does tell them. So I'm curious to see, you know, they mean so much to the culture and to the story of hip hop. And what do you feel like your art does to enhance that as part of that?
Geoff, please.
For me, it was 48 years old, so I grew up in the culture. Hip hop, fundamentally, outside of my biological parents, raised me. I learned everything about, you know, even about my Black ancestry, you know, through listening to Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, Chuck D, Enemy. So hip hop's important to me. So when I think about what these gentlemen's legacies mean, it's a growth and evolution, I think, for the culture of hip hop at 50. And that growth and evolution for me was, how do I take this music that means so much to me, and how do I create and put it in places and spaces that it wasn't necessarily supposed to be in, and to make it seem more normal going forward for the next 50 years, that we should be at Carnegie, we should be at Lincoln Center, we should be at Meridian Hall, Toronto, we should be at Royal Albert Hall in London, we should be at all these places and spaces that necessarily weren't open to our culture as Black people to even attend shows in the 50s and the 60s. And, you know, you think about the history of Lincoln Center. I mean, Lincoln Center is built on San Juan Hill, which was a predominantly Latin and Black community. So, all right, you kick us out to build these places, and then you don't let us in. So there's a lot to how, and I use this pun all the time, it just is what it is. Like, for me, it was she's, man. Big has a song called Kick in the Door. I have a responsibility with having a part in helping the legacy continue to grow, of kicking in the door into these places and spaces that, one, would build a narrative that, oh, hip hop it's too gangster, it's too dangerous to have this type of audience in our environment. Man, whatever. I'm going to show you how you can do it. I'm going to show you how to build a show that allows for these venues to be able to digest it and take it in, and then for their members to be like, oh man, hip hop, we put it in this one box, but it's in a total different environment and box than we ever even imagined it before. And they didn't even imagine, they didn't have the vision for that. But I wanted to show them how to build the vision, how to make it work. And thankfully, we're able to do that. So I just think it's growth and evolution. And that's what I think, as a steward of the culture, that's what my role is for the culture, to keep on growing it and evolving it to be part of these other places and spaces, and for people who might not be familiar with it intimately to be able to digest it in a way that can translate to them, and they have a connection point with it, so they can develop the love in the way that I have the love for it.
You know, as one, Arron, I want to get to you on that same question, but I just will note that for you to reference that song, I'm from Queens, and the song that is about, the song of that Kick in the Door is about, that MC is literally my favorite MC. So you struck a nerve there. If you really understand, this is where, if you follow the culture, you got to understand the culture. I'm not saying no names. Y'all listening.
No, but hold it. You live in Brooklyn though now. So
I do, but that's still, listen. I'm still Queens at the heart. And if you follow the culture and you are someone who follows the show, you got to go do your own research to understand what me and Geoff are talking about, because that song, Kick in the Door, was actually about a particular MC who's from New York and was super hot at the time. So we're just going to leave that there. But Arron, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on how does that expression of this art in a particular way, where do you fit that into the context of hip hop at 50? And how do you feel like that helps to contextualize the larger conversation that we're having?
Sure. Tupac specifically, steward is such a great word. You know, sometimes we are the leaders of these things, and sometimes we are merely a passenger. I have situations and clients of mine, like the Redding family, who I am at the front of that ship, steering with them. Tupac is such a large entity, and I don't mean that in a business sense, I mean in a global sense. You know, he is not just a person, he is a thought. He is bigger than life. So when thinking about what can one mortal man, no pun intended, do to help further that along, it's similar to what Geoff said. Like, we can merely put this artist in this art into rooms that it hasn't been before, so people go, oh, that's what that means. Or, oh, that's what thug life means. They hate you gives, little infants, fucks everybody. Oh, well, what does that mean? And to pull out, oh, that was a tattoo across his stomach. The whole concept for Wake Me When I'm Free was the unpeeling of the layers of the onion. For those of your audience, Charles, that actually made it to the exhibit here in LA, you'll understand that you walk into a very clean, white, beautiful lobby over 25,000 square feet, but you're walking into what is his place in heaven. And then the first thing that you do from that beautiful, white, all beautiful space is you walk into the scene of a hanging. Because you can't explain what this man is saying at 25 years old without explaining why he is saying it. And again, all art is context. So when I think about the 50th anniversary of something that we created, you know, there's not many forms that we've created that we get credit for in this life and in this world. You know, we have jazz and we have hip hop, and that's about all they're giving us credit for these days. But we'll take it. It's a start, and we need to continue that. All these different genres. But hip hop is our most important. It's the world's most important. It is the beat that everybody dances to globally. And just to be involved in the idea that we're putting forth something from something that Tupac made or from something that Biggie made, like their hands touch this stuff metaphorically or literally, whether it's an item in the exhibit or his writing of Kick in the Door and that experience which turns into a song. For me, from 48-year-old Arron Saxe from Boston, Massachusetts, that gets to think about, okay, how do I want someone to experience Tupac's life? How do I want someone who knows him intimately to experience it? And how do I want someone that doesn't know him at all to experience it? So I think for me, and I don't want to speak for Geoff, but these are pinch yourself moments, but you also have to slap yourself out of it to understand you got to deliver. Back to the original point at the top of the conversation, which is we didn't think you could do it. We didn't think you could be here. Everything is about resources, but and we know who holds most of those resources.
Right.
Hip Hop 50 is it's wonderful to celebrate what was accomplished and started 50 years ago, but there's no organization that's holding it that we own. There's no one entity that is doing it and benefiting all the people that built hip hop over the last 50 years. It is a number with a zero in it. And it's cool for this year. August 11th will be wonderful in New York City and all over the world, but let's keep going. But we have to stop and celebrate, but we have to keep going.
You all both touched on something that is a challenge for me. So this summer, for Big's birthday, if you recall, Geoff or Arron, you may know, New York City's transit at the particular subway stops where I grew up, where my cousins grew up, in terms of like just running around the neighborhood, they issued these special big transit cards, and it was a really big deal. Right. That's it right there, right? I remember the morning, I really wasn't even going to try to go and get one. But I did just stop by to see like how crazy it was. And it was crazy. It was nuts. Double, triple wrapped around both at Clinton, Washington, both on the G train and on the C train, if you know anything about, New York subway life. But it was lots of white people. Mad gentrification. And the thing that I have wrestled with is while the talent of Big and Tupac was otherworldly and was super unique. The experience of each in terms of what they gave voice to was very common. That experience is what made them so loved and relatable because there were so many who they spoke for. The same people who were in that line weren't really necessarily interested in hearing that experience. Now, as cultural icons, as Arron said, yo, this is hip hop is the beat that they dance to. It's a very interesting dichotomy for me to wrestle with the people who don't look like me, who are so willing to embrace the talent of a Big or a Pac, but also still skeptical and willing to reject the experience of the tens of thousands of people who they spoke for. That's something that I have a real difficulty reconciling. And as you all look at, from a hindsight perspective, the numbers of people who sort of embrace the art now as compared to rejecting the experience then and now, how do you sort of navigate that? Yeah, Geoff. Yeah, Geoff. It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it goes back to, deeper conversation around cultural appropriation. Now that it's cool to like hip hop because it is ubiquitous and it's everywhere, now they can lean into it, but yet they don't know the struggles as to why hip hop began in the first place. And I think this is how I do it now. And this is just me, man. I don't give a damn about how they feel. I don't give a damn about how they might be trying to jump on the bandwagon and embrace it. I don't care because I don't do this for them. I feel like I understand those struggles as a black man in America. Now, I didn't grow up, at the poverty line. I grew up, thankfully my parents, two-parent household, middle-class family, if you will. And I knew my pride of my culture as a black man and where I came from. So I'm still of the fact that, you guys are kind of stealing the culture to a degree and not recognizing the stories. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to hit you over the head again and again and again with where we're going to keep on moving this thing. Hop on the train. You are, to Aaron's point earlier, you guys are actually passengers. Okay, so if you're a passenger, sometimes you want to know you're going to be in the main cabin, you're going to be in Delta Comfort, you're going to be in first class. Well, we're flying the ship, thankfully, flying the plane. The ones that are the 10,000 people that Big and them are speaking and Pac have been speaking for are, I believe, riding first class now. Y'all can sit in the main cabin, come along for the ride. And that's fine. I don't have to explain everything to you because I know those people that really care, that are the ones that are moving this damn needle forward, are those 10,000 plus people. Are those kids like myself, those kids like Arron, those kids throughout the globe that have come from challenging environments? We're going to keep on flying this plane moving forward. The ancillary fans are always going to be there. Fine, so be it. Enjoy the music. I'm not necessarily doing it for y'all anyway. Right. I'm doing it for those first class passengers, those 10,000 people, and I'm trying to do it while channeling what Big and Pac's spirit is and where they would want to see their legacies go forward. And if I can, and thankfully the estate allows me to kind of pilot the ship in this one lane, then I'm just going to keep on going forward and not worry about it. I don't know if that answers it, but that's kind of how I look at it.
It's a good perspective, and I want to get Arron's on that one because for me, that is something that I always marvel at. Like, it bugs me out how I can go into the spaces that are dominated by liberal white folks and they can spout out a Biggie lyric, but if they saw Big the person on the street and he wasn't Big the person, they not really trying to mix that up, right? Like, people who can walk around talking about, yeah, keep your head up and Pac was a revolutionary and this, that, and the third, but when he just got shot, when he did his last interview with Kevin Powell with Vibe, when he, that Pac was not somebody you was trying to embrace. That Pac was a problem. That Pac was a thug. So it's always interesting to me to see how majority culture is okay embracing, in hindsight, the art, the image, and the music of who we're talking about. But again, in the current day manifestation of what that experience is and represents somehow remains tone deaf. And it's just such like an interesting thing to watch when you see it like in front of your eyes, because you out here listening to Ready to Die, but you're okay living in a city or a space where the conditions that he's rapping about still exist, still are prevalent, and you're not invested at all in doing anything about it.
I mean, you that Pac that you referred to that was not huggable at that time is 23 years old, is getting fed up, I mean, incarcerated, realizes like, fuck, like, what more can I do? Like, what else can I do? And to your point earlier, if that 29-year-old white man on the street stops to that 23-year-old black man who is maybe having a tough time, not trying to be all Pollyanna, and has a dialogue with them and sees that, they will understand. And I saw it in the Tupac exhibit. It wasn't just us that went, to your point earlier. It's all about appropriation. Hip hop does not grow in the way that it does globally until it leaves where it starts. It's like a child. To be able to grow, you have to be able to get out of where you're from. The commercialization of leaving where it started makes it into this global thing. But KRS and Chuck D and all those people that you mentioned before, like, we know what that is. We understand and hold that close and dear. When you mix that with commerce and you mix that with selling tickets and selling t-shirts and making NFTs and doing metaverse and all of these things that commercialize the art, there is an internal struggle that I'm sure is for an artist, for us stewards, to use your word. I don't have that struggle. I come at everything from a purely fan point of view because I am one. I have Tribe on my wall behind me. I have Otis Redding on the floor. I have RZA and Wu-Tang here. Like, this is so much more than a project in the 50th anniversary of hip hop, whatever that is. And to use Jeff's analogy, like, we are now at a point where I now have, because of the blessing from Afeni Shakur and then from the estate, we opened up a beautiful exhibition, which now allows me to go speak to any iconic hip hop artist, estate, or family and say, they didn't think we could do it, but we did it. Now let's do it for you, because the money is there from these corporations and sponsors and partners. The desire is there from the audience and the market and the city. The desire is there to participate from the community if you can build a proper community programming slate while you're in the city. Hip-hop can do a lot of great things besides be celebrated this year. And the point of the exhibit, and I think what Geoff did with Biggie and bringing that music indoors, inside of Lincoln Center, which I think is critical. It started out outside. They only gave them outside in June. But then they saw, and then, oh, okay, then let's give you inside in December. Come on in, guys, and bring all your friends with you. So I try to have blinders on with that. Biggie and Tupac are such polarizing global these ideas. You know, I also manage other estates which are, I want to say softer, but different legacies, different outcomes, different, you know. Biggie, Tupac, Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison. There are certain musicians and artists that are these lightning rods that have these devoted, ravenous fan bases simply because gone too soon. Such a hard record match. We lose Big 26 years ago yesterday. Such a hard record scratch. More now with an exhibition, with an orchestral performance, with Biggie in the metaverse that the estate did this year, which was groundbreaking in the musical space for what they did in the metaverse, and to do a full concert with a deceased artist. Like, that's next level shit. But it starts to your going back to the top of the conversation with, I didn't think you guys could do this. Well, it's because nobody tried. But now that we know, now that we've peeked in, now that Jeff's inside of these companies and I'm inside, we know it's there. We now, thankfully, can say, we've done it already. Let's do it for you.
One of my last questions to tie up everything that we were just talking about, because it really is something that I've been thinking about. If you think about sort of the Mount Rushmore of who was where they are at that peak, when Big and Pac were Big and Pac, right? There's really only a couple of other names. You got Jay, you got Nas, you got Snoop. That's pretty much like who was where they were at that time, right? And you know this because if you look at the conversations and the lyrics and who was writing songs about what, that's who was in the conversation. Wu-Tang is there, but they're in a totally different space as a hip-hop rock band. So they're like in a different space. But if you look at that sort of pantheon of that moment in history, that's who's there. To Geoff's point about a record scratch, the unfortunate thing is Pac and Big are no longer with us. Where I'm going with this is, if they're the OGs, that Mount Rushmore that I just gave, right? Of that moment, that specific moment in time, I'm not going on anybody's top 5 list or anything. I'm just saying that specific moment in time. Nas is still here. Jay is still here. Snoop is still here. They give, for whatever it's worth, to whatever degree people may be interested and to whatever degree they want to, they provide somewhat of a blueprint of growth and transition that's ongoing for younger artists. So in that way, because they're still here, they serve as somewhat of a bridge to like a new generation of artists to move and transition throughout different phases of their career. Because you can look, you can see them, you can see where they ended up, you can see how they made moves, what worked, what didn't, all of those things, right? Big and Pac are missing from that conversation. How, in what ways does their legacy from your perspective, like, serve as a bridge, or can it serve as a bridge, given that they're not physically still here?
Yeah, I was going to say that for me personally, that's the core of what I do. Is I manage estates for artists that aren't here. So that is the job. Is what are those bridges? I don't manage the Tupac estate. I manage a number of others. The bridge always is younger. When you use that, it's always go because we got us. We
Right.
are fans. We're not going anywhere. The question is, how do I turn my 12-year-old daughter and 9-year-old son onto that music? And those bridges are everything. It's TikTok, it's T-shirts, it's documentaries, it's books, it's anime, I was just watching, there's a preview for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Again, thinking about legacy brands. That was around when we were kids. Seth Rogen is redoing it, and the trailer, the first voice you hear is Q-Tip doing Can I Kick It? So I think, and it was the first song in Tom and Jerry. Again, I have 2 small children, and I was like, hip-hop is all over everything right now. And it's great because my kids know who Q-Tip is, and they know who Redman is, and Busta. They know all these voices and names, whereas when we were kids, we knew who Lionel Richie was and Prince, and there's such an exposure that this generation gets. Big and Pac specifically, those 3 guys you mentioned, titans of business industry now, still top of their game lyrically, still incredibly relevant, but so different than Big and Pac. So different in their. Just imagine if Tupac had social media. What would be the messages being put out there, knowing that the core of his life is activism, knowing that music was a bridge, to use the analogy, to get to help people and to be an activist for his people. So, it's a great what if. It's why these estates and legacies, not just Big and Pac, but, Big Pun, one album, gone. What would have happened? What could have been? Think about how huge Puerto Rico has been in the last 12, 15 years. Jennifer Lopez and Bad Bunny and this whole reggaeton, all of this starts in the late 90s. And Pun is at the center of that. And he's gone. So it's kind of the magic sauce of this business, especially with the artists that aren't here, is that mystery of loss is the allure of why it stays relevant and why it stays big. Otis Redding dies at 26 years old in a plane crash, sitting on the dock of the bay, is not even released yet. You know, what could that have been? He was begging and pleading for years, singing love songs, and then he's sitting on a dock in Sausalito, California, with a guitar strumming about, and you hear seagulls in the background, right? So what could that have been? I think that part of these estates, James Dean drives off a cliff in his car, 23 years old. What could have been? So, you know, I always choose to not focus on the end, which is why a lot of this business is about the art and not about the untimely demise, because that's the low-hanging fruit, especially when we talk about black men, how we die, how tragically we die. Pop Smoke is killed in the Hollywood Hills, and it's not about that. It's about everything that leads up to the moment of that passing, for me, is what's important. I don't care about the plane crash. I don't care that Donny Hathaway plunged to his death from the Essex house in New York in 1979. I care about everything that does until that moment that he chooses, then it's over for him, and that's okay. But we are the ones that keep it going. So again, long-winded answer to say that the bridges are so critical, because that's how these estates and legacies keep going and stay relevant.
I'll keep mine short, because I know we're coming up towards the end. But I think when you see, you know, Arron mentioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Seth Rogen, the opening track for the new Transformers movie, massive trailer, big. So it's going to get the music. These guys are 24, 25 years old when they passed. Their music and their spirit and their souls were so large that we're still here 25 years later talking about them still being on the Mount Rushmore with all the other hip hop artists that have come after them and that will continue to come after them. Those two resonate because there's a Mount Rushmore, but because of the allure of the loss, they actually almost sit above.
That's right.
The genre, like as a whole, they are pop culture icons. They are entertainment icons of the veins of the other people that Arron mentioned that have been lost. The Marilyn Monroes, the Jimi Hendrixes, you know, those people the Bob Marleys, you know, they sit there. They're beyond like the genre. And because of that, we get to take those legacies and even that music and then still have it have its level of importance in all the new content that's being created through the social medias, through the TikToks, through those challenges, through the remixing of these records, through it being in blockbuster films, through syncs on major commercials now. So you hear these guys' voice forever. And that's we have a small part in doing that. I'm thankful that the estate does an incredible job. Mama Wallace, Wayne, Mark, Elliott do an incredible job of keeping Biggie alive. And his kids are here. So now you're going to see the progeny doing dope shit, you know, as well with these legacies. So it's a beautiful place to be. It allows, I think, Big, in my case, to continue to resonate. It allows me to have conversations. Because when you say Notorious B.I.G., everyone picks up your phone call. Everyone picks up your phone call. Everyone wants to listen to what you're about to articulate to them about how can they get in the business of Notorious B.I.G. And I know it's the same thing for Pac. And it's a beautiful place to be because that's how talented these young men were, these young black men were. Their genius is beyond. You can't even capture all their genius. But it's so important that they have that there's these incredible teams that look after their legacies, that are the ones that are help driving the ship going forward from the marketing, the art and commerce, and blending those two together. So ultimately, they can continue to overcharge brothers for what they did to the Cold Crush.
Listen, so much that we could talk about, so much that I've really already
Part
enjoyed.
two, Charles. Part two.
We are gonna have to revisit this, especially as you guys continue to do more work and your work travels. But like we could literally just even now just keep going. But before we get out of here, we usually play a game on the podcast called Life or Death Hip Hop Karaoke, and that is, you know, you got a loved one and they are right now captured, and you've got one verse from one record that you got to get right. You don't have to do the verse on the show. We'll take your word for it. But it is imperative that you do not mess up this verse at all, or it is kaput for the loved one that you have. So it's life. It's not even your life. It's the life of a loved one. Life of death. Hip hop karaoke. I'm gonna add a twist to this one and see how you guys answer. Geoff, you have to pick one Tupac verse from one Pac song, Life or Death karaoke. You cannot get it wrong. Again, you're not going to do the verse, but you cannot get it wrong. And Arron, you have to pick one big verse, Life or Death karaoke. Which one? What are you going with? Arron, what are you going with?
Well, I'm 6'7", so I love it when they call me Big Papa.
All right, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's an easy one because Big has a lot of like lyrically complex verses.
Yeah.
That could get tricky.
But you said one of my family members is going to get got.
So. Right. No. So you played it safe. That's smart because some people would go like on some real slickness and it's like, yo, do you really want to do that with your kids on the line? Like, for example, like you don't want to mess around and get cute and choose his verse with Bone just because it's a crazy verse. But do you want to try that on Life and Death hip-hop karaoke? Probably not.
Nope.
Geoff, what do you got? Your one Pac verse.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a chorus because it's and I'm gonna go with Machiavelli. And it's
okay.
Come with me. Hail Mary, run quick, see. What do we have here now? Do you want to ride or die? Because yo, you gotta have your ride or dies with you. La da 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 da. Like,
there you go. Can't get that wrong. You should not get that wrong, especially on Life or Death karaoke. Listen, this has been a Black Brilliance conversation on the Charles Coleman podcast. I am so thankful to have had Geoff Walker and Arron Saxe with me. Super duper amazing stewards of the culture, of the artist, and of the icons. Be on the lookout. I suspect we will be doing a part 2. My name is Charles Coleman, and you have been watching the Charles Coleman podcast. We catch you next week, next Wednesday, when a new episode drops. Peace.